from the political groups. The first speaker will be Michael Gahler for 1.5 minutes.
President, dear High Representative, I'm speaking on behalf of my colleague Chris Peters, who could not make it. So, dear colleagues, with the opening of Varosha, the relations of Turkey and the EU are reaching a watershed moment. Incident after incident, step by step, the Turkish president continuously moves away from European values and standards. The EU-Turkey relations are at a historical low point. This unilateral and illegal move not only deteriorates the EU-Turkey relations, it also negatively affects the lives of the Cypriot population. It fuels the tensions and division embedded in the society of the Cypriot island. This violation of the UN Security Council resolutions will never contribute to a comprehensive solution. It only serves the internal politics of the Turkish president at the cost of the Cypriot people. A two-state solution will never solve the conflict. Dear colleagues, the opening of Varosha is not just a standalone incident. 2 months ago, this European Parliament condemned Turkey's illegal activities in the continental shelf of Greece and Cyprus. Earlier, we condemned the Turkish military operation in northeast Syria. Recently, we witnessed how the Turkish president used the murder of Emmanuel Paty in France for his own political goals. The list of incidents is long, and it seems it has not yet come to an end. 2 days ago, Irini mission and the German ship that was prevented from searching the ship. I think we need a stronger mandate for Irini. Perhaps you could work on that. A clear signal from the EU is needed. Therefore, I urge the European Council to consider well-targeted measures while continuing the dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll now give the floor to our colleague Nacho Sanchez Amor. 2 minutes.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, President. Well, Mr. Borrell, here we are in a rather commonplace debate on Turkey. We seem to have one in every session now, so we might as well make it a regular slot on the agenda. And the Turkish government is making this very easy for us. With all its actions, it's making it rather comfortable for us to include this on the agenda, since their actions are ever more aggressive. These are premeditated and unnecessary actions on the part of the government, and they're part of an electoral campaign, which is the worst way of getting something into the public eye. But there's something different here. Turkey has made no attempt to justify its actions in the Eastern Mediterranean. This is a flagrant breach of international law, and there's no storyline to try and shape these events. And a two-state solution, as my colleague Mr. Gallagher said, would be extremely dangerous. And indeed, it was not a solution that had been taken seriously up until now. And as my colleague said once again, the EU needs to support a viable solution in the area. But I would like to focus now on Varosha, because the relationship with Turkey means that we sometimes get things mixed up. As Mr. Borrell was saying, Varosha deserves to be on the agenda because of what's happening there, without it being part of other conflictual events with Turkey. So I would ask colleagues, please, to support an agreement on the resolution that we will be voting on tomorrow. We'll be denouncing the actions of Turkey there, and we need to look at possible sanctions against Turkey, Mr. Borrell. There needs to be a sea change in our attitude, and we need to come back to a framework of the underlying conflict in Cyprus in the framework of the relevant UN Security Council resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll give the floor to Katalin Che for 1 minute 30.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean have been high for months, and the partial reopening of Varosha fits into this very regrettable pattern. Turkey's unilateral actions in the region highlighted the old paradox about how fragile stability really is. But it also reminded us that we have a responsibility to preserve it. The resolution we are about to adopt will contribute to this. Without meddling into the affairs of a sovereign country, Our job is to demand that international agreements are upheld, that the rights of local citizens are respected under all circumstances. People of Cyprus, regardless of their background, mother tongue, or identity, should not be held hostage to President Erdogan's nationalist and revisionist playbook. This is an agenda that we have come to witness far too often, an agenda of conflict and division, designed to fan the flames of hate instead of looking for solutions and building consensus. And the EU must send now a strong signal to Turkey that violations of international law and violations of the sovereignty of EU member states are not tolerated. And this is why we are calling on the Council to consider targeted sanctions against Turkey if President Erdogan refuses to settle the issue through constructive dialogue. Because Cypriots on both sides of the country deserve much better than this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Nicolas Bay. 1 minute.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, thank you very much, President. Colleagues, well, nearly 50 years now, Turkey has been scandalously, illegally occupying part of the territory of an EU member state. And now Erdogan is going one step further. He is now calling for the partition, pure and simple, of the island. The more that we try to give in to him, the more he sees that as docility and weakness, the further he goes. Europe gives him billions of euros, and he gives us billions of migrants. We give him financial advantages. He supports terrorists and extremists in Libya, in Syria, and even closer to home. It seems that Germany has been totally the key to all of this. It's never been a major military and diplomatic power. It seems that the European Union simply bows down to the Sultan of Ankara, and this is absolutely unacceptable. We need to think about sanctions, the customs union, retribution measures. We need to be putting an end to the accession of Turkey to the EU and also to its presence in the Council of Europe and NATO. What's lacking here is willpower to do anything. Thank you very much. I'll give the floor now to Sergei Lagodinsky for 2 minutes.
What is true leadership in times of COVID, economic decay, and global instability? What would true leaders do to give their citizens what they need most? Prosperity and healthy environment. True leaders would start with trade, not confrontations. True leaders would unite, not separate, both at home and in the neighborhood. True leaders would engage instead of invading. They would rule by law instead of oppression. They would release from jail people who stand for the political diversity of their country, for the wealth, intellectual wealth of their country. Their names are Osman Kavala, Selahattin Demirtas, Cihan Erdal, Ahmet Altan, Figen Yüksekdag. They would listen to them instead of imprisoning them. True leaders would not provoke their neighbors. They would de-escalate. Leaders would set a vision in which their country is part of a family of democracies, part of Europe, and not an alien country, an oppressor surrounded by fearful neighbors. It was my conviction all the time that Turkey deserves such a vision, that Turkey deserves to be such a leader in its region and on our common continent. What we have been witnessing in the Mediterranean, on Cyprus, and now in Cyprus and Varosha, are not signs of this leadership. They are signs of weakness. It is a risky game that endangers such leadership and, quite frankly, someday a membership of Turkey in Europe. This resolution is our last call to change the trajectory of our bilateral relationship. We are saying to the Turkish government, we are not just listening to your words, we are watching your actions. And quite frankly, your actions are discomforting, they are sobering, and they are disappointing. We are out of last chances to put our relationship back on track. Please help us with this, our last chance.
Muito obrigado. Thank you very much. I'll now give the floor to Angel Jambedski for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, Varosha means the old city. This is the old city of Famagusta, and Famagusta belongs to Cyprus and the Cypriots. Varosha was illegally invaded by Turkey, and it is an illegal state in these terms. And when we talk about Erdogan, he is a man who committed crimes. And we try to establish relationship with him, but in the meantime, he buys Russian rockets. Maybe he has to use this rocket against NATO, and then we will understand what really happens. Erdogan was in war against the first Christians, Armenians. We close then our eyes to that. We do that now too. We have to say that Erdogan is a dictator and Famagusta is a Cypriot town and belongs to the Cypriots. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Georgios Georgiou, 2 minutes.
Borrell, η αμόχωστος, η πιο ανατολική πόλη της.
Vice President Borrell, Famagusta, the easternmost city in the European Union, has been occupied by the Turkish army. This was the case in August 1974, and since then it's been a silent city, a ghost town, a black stain on the history of Europe. Nonetheless, it's a living city, and the citizens of Famagusta would like to go back there. And it's no coincidence that on the 15th of November, the anniversary of the pseudo-state, Mr. Erdogan decided to have a picnic there with his entourage. This provocation was unbearable. The anger of Famagusta citizens cannot be understood, nor indeed the anger of its dead. And Greek Cypriots and Greek Turks alike opposed to this. The ghosts of the dead inhabitants moved around the non-invited visitors to Varosha. Turkey's provocation in Cyprus, in Varosha, is unacceptable. With its opening of Varosha, with the will to settle Varosha, this is something that's absolutely unbelievable, that undermines every action of the United Nations Secretary General. There have been dozens of resolutions, reports, statements from the United Nations and the European Union. In particular, Resolution 750 requesting that Varosha be returned to its legitimate citizens. This resolution has been adopted, but Erdogan disregards this all. He's now intervening in Nagorno-Karabakh and attacking European leaders. In Germany, for instance, it was said that Erdogan would have to see reason or face sanctions, and the Cypriot issue can only be resolved if there are talks on the basis of a bi-zonal, bi-communal federation. And this has to be done with political equality, a level playing field to share out the resources, the maritime resources, amongst Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots. We must work to preserve our dignity and credibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Marton Gengiosi for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. I tend to agree with the assessment that the opening of Varosha by Turkey and any reference of Erdogan to a two-state solution only contributes to the increase of tension and must be reversed. But let's not make the same mistake as a few weeks ago when the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh was on the agenda of the European Parliament, and when some MEPs thought it's a war of religion or some clash of civilization, yet others mixed in their feelings about Erdogan or Turkey into the subject. Let's realize the historical context of this conflict that underlies 46 years of division on the island, and also the nature of this conflict. There are two indigenous peoples, Turkish and Greek Cypriots. Any solution that leaves one or the other out or disenfranchised is not a solution and is a grave mistake. There is a federal solution of reunification to this problem. It is high time to dust off the Annan plan rejected by the Greek Cypriots in 2004 when a divided Cyprus was allowed to enter the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll give the floor to Lefteris Christoforu. 1 minute 30. Today, colleagues, we are talking about the criminal actions of Turkey against Famagusta. Turkey continues to be the protagonist of all sorts of criminal activities from the Caucasus through to the Mediterranean. And not one single sanction has been imposed upon this country by the EU. I'm an EU citizen. I'm always ready to stand up and defend the idea of the EU. I'm also a member of the Parliament. And to me, this is shameful. The EU is not living up to its values. It has shown that it cannot act to have its values respected. And that is what we're seeing today with Turkey. Mr. Borrell, how do you feel? How do you feel at the Commission and Council? Not today, but yesterday you should have been suspending the customs union with the EU. You should have banned the possibility of selling European weapons to Turkey. These weapons are could be used against Greece or Cyprus or the Armenians. Famagusta is the city of dreams. It is a city that has a 36th century history. It has been part of the Greek and Christian world. Varosha is a European city. It is your city. So I call upon you to defend this European city and European citizens. You must impose upon Erdogan a proper solution for this city. I should have a right to my land and my property, the land of my ancestors. How can the EU act? You need to impose sanctions, as Mr. Borrell might have suggested earlier. Thank you very much. I call upon all of you to respect your speaking times. I will now give the floor to Dimitris Papadakis for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had the honor of being born in Famagusta, Varosha. We didn't leave there by choice. There has now been an agreement between the Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot leaders on the return of Varosha to its citizens. I remember well how my mother packed suitcases thinking she was going to return to Varosha. But the international community has been betrayed by Turkey. Turkey couldn't care less what the European Union does. It's time to impose strict sanctions on Turkey, and Famagusta must be returned to its legitimate inhabitants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hilda Fautman is the next speaker. 1 minute 30.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, dear High Representative, dear colleagues. The division of Cyprus is not new and dates back long. The island was divided already before the Turkish invasion in 1973. What is new now is that Turkey seems to have given up on a negotiated solution. The decision To open up Varosha is a provocation against all those wishing for a peaceful settlement and a reunification of the island. We saw and noted the brave protests from Turkish Cypriots against Erdogan's visit to Cyprus. And we know many Cypriots on both sides want a solution. I really hope that the UN-led negotiations can be restarted and finally, after decades of talks, be guided to a successful conclusion. Mr. Borrell, we must be honest. It is shameful that we still have a divided country in Europe. The benefits in economic and political terms of a negotiated solution will benefit all Cypriots alike on both sides. As a Belgian, I know that federal structures can be complicated, that compromises demands a lot of political will. But I'm also convinced that Cypriots on both sides have the ability to reach an agreement, unify their country and live and prosper together with added stability for the whole region. This is what Ankara and Erdogan should work for, support and focus on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll give the floor to Bernard Zimniuk. 1 minute 30.
Mr. President, colleagues, Erdogan's speech in the Cyprus ghost town of Varosha is another example of his provocation and military confrontation. Whether it's Syria, Libya or Nagorno-Karabakh, Erdogan is intervening in flagrant violation of international law, and in Cyprus this is part of the struggle for gas and oil. In Europe, for many years, he has been funding the building of mosques where young people are indoctrinated through anti-Western agitation in order to form a fifth column. And the EU's reaction to this provocation is always weak and helpless. You only need to look at today's order paper and the reference to the urgent need for the resumption of talks. Haven't we learned anything from history? When it comes to mad dictators, appeasement is not a sensible policy. Should we keep re-rehearsing this debate every few months, lamenting what Erdogan does and wishing we could talk to him? Erdogan understands only one language, the language of toughness. Turkey's membership of NATO should be called into question, and we should impose sanctions on Turkey. Or are we going to give in to this Islamist troublemaker? We're certainly not over here.
Thank you very much. I'll give the floor now to Charlie Weimers. 1 minute.
Herr talman!
Thank you very much, President. This resolution is the 12th in a row of toothless hot air. Now, I mean, you could send an angry letter or something like that and agree, sort of give you some applause. But no, we need sanctions. But no, the Liberals say, oh, that's too tough. The Christian Democrats, it's too tough for them as well. You have to give them a possibility to introduce some reforms and to move in the right direction. When are we going to take concrete measures against Erdogan? We should be suspending the customs union with Turkey for 6 months. We should be stopping pre-accession assistance. We should stop paying Erdogan for carrying out our border controls. We should introduce further measures, but we seem to be too cautious. This is a neo-Ottoman effort, and that's what we're facing here, President. Thank you very much. I'll give the floor to Özlem Demirel. 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. The latest provocation from the Ankara palace is centered on Varosha and promotes a two-state solution. This is not a bazaar, however. This is about the future of Cyprus, and only the people of Cyprus can decide, and only by safeguarding the rights of minorities. This is not the time for an autocrat to step in. What Erdogan is doing is one thing, but the EU has failed over decades to solve the Cyprus question. The gulf between the population groups is growing because of the nationalist forces at play, and this plays into the hands of Erdogan. Domestically and internationally, Erdogan has his back against the wall. We should make sure that there is a peaceful democratic solution of the Cyprus problem.
Thank you very much. I'll give the floor to Darian Rockmaker for 1 minute.
Geachte voorzitter, ik deel volledig de
President, well, I very much share the anger of my colleagues. Perhaps it's time to admit once and for all that Turks and Cypriot Turks, under the leadership of Tatar and Erdogan, are simply too much for the EU to handle. Erdogan is trying to exploit gas reserves in the Mediterranean. Turkey refuses to uphold any international agreement and has occupied Varosha, despite it being sealed off. Any type of control seems to have been lost. And this is unacceptable. There are no longer any rules that are being respected. Are Tatar and Erdogan any different to Putin? I believe that international measures need to be applied against Turkey and the Greek Cypriot authorities. They need stricter rules. That's absolutely necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is David McAllister. 1 minute 30.
Herr Präsident, vielen Dank.
President, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, well, unfortunately, here we are once again in plenary criticising the aggressive behaviour of Turkey. Well, I should stress this right from the outset. What Turkey is doing in Varosha is not acceptable. As the European Parliament, we stand by the side of Cyprus, and we expressly condemn this further unnecessary provocation from Ankara. The reference points for the EU have to be the resolutions of the United Nations. No activity should be carried out that is not in line with these resolutions. Turkish actions in Varosha are going to seriously undermine efforts to finding a peaceful solution to the Cypriot question. The illegal drillings in Cypriot and Greek waters are a further step. The bilateral agreement with Libya, the escalation in Nagorno-Karabakh and Syria, this is yet one further destabilizing Turkish action. Our High Representative Josep Borrell deserves our support in his efforts in the region. A solution can only be achieved on the basis of international law and dialogue. But to allow this kind of dialogue to take place, Turkey needs to refrain from unilateral provocations. Otherwise, sanctions from the EU have to remain an option. Rather than permanent confrontation, we need to ensure that our relationship with Turkey is characterized by dialogue and cooperation. But for that to happen, Turkey's policies need to change substantially. Thank you very much. I'll give the floor to Tonino Piccola for 1 minute.
Any change of the status quo at Varosha is a violation of the relevant UN Security Council resolutions, and we strongly condemn the latest actions by Turkey. Instead of contributing to the agreement, these actions negatively modify the situation on the ground and undermine mutual trust. The only solution is to relaunch negotiations on the reunification of Cyprus under the auspices of the United Nations Secretary General as soon as possible. Here we urge Turkey to commit concretely to this end. I support the joint text of resolution and agreement to focus on Varosha. There will be an opportunity for the Parliament to address overall relations with Turkey in a country-specific report. What, over decades, was a strategic partnership is turning more and more into strategic provocation by Turkey. Therefore, the European Union will need to unify its voice and protect its interests and the territorial integrity of its member states. Thank you.
Muito obrigado. Tem agora a palavra.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kyuchik, 1 minute 30.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senor Borrell, dear colleagues, after a failure to reach a comprehensive settlement to the Cyprus issue in Crans-Montana in 2017, both sides are moving further and further away. European Union has unfortunately failed to be an objective broker in Cyprus. We have lost the momentum, and we should not be surprised that we are facing much more hardened rhetoric these days. Today, the hotspot is Varosha, but if we want to avoid any further unilateral actions that could raise tensions on the island, the EU should play an active, constructive and objective role in promoting cooperation and reconciliation between the two sides. Turkish Cypriot people spoke at the recent elections and stated that all alternatives for settlement should be on the table because a settlement on the basis of federation has not been possible for 50 years due to the Greek Cypriot unwillingness to share power and prosperity with the Turkish Cypriot side, as declared by UN Secretary General in Annan Plan and his report of May 2004. Of course, in order to move forward, all unilateral activities in the Eastern Mediterranean must be immediately ceased and replaced by diplomacy, cooperation and dialogue. A regional conference on the matter, which includes Turkish Cypriot and Greek Cypriot sides as co-owners of the hydrocarbon resources around the island, Turkey, Greece and all the relevant parties should be convened as soon as possible. Thank you.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Roman Haider, 1 minute 30.
Danke, Herr Vorsitzender.
Yes, thank you very much, President. Well, this latest action by President Erdogan in Varosha in the occupied part of Turkey is just the latest in a row of provocations and aggressions that we've seen from Turkey against the members of the EU. And it's particularly a further step, the call for succession of the Turkish part of Cyprus. That is a direct attack on the territorial integrity of a member state of the European Union. If there is not a clear answer from the EU as a whole to this provocation, if this comes to pass, then European solidarity will be nothing but an empty phrase. I call for an immediate end to the accession negotiations with Turkey. We also need to stop any further payments going to Turkey, whether we're talking about development cooperation or whatever. Then there needs to be sanctions against the Turkish economy if they do not immediately stop their aggressions. And Turkey needs to recognize the territorial sovereignty of Cyprus. If Turkey is not prepared to do that, then all agreements between Turkey and the EU, then I think that we need to act. We need to ensure that we have decisive and clear action against a brutal and unscrupulous aggressor.
Muito obrigado. Dou agora a palavra.
Thank you very much. Stanislav Brzezinski, 1 minute.
Thank you very much. Today's debate shows that the clash of two concepts remains in force. Cyprus is divided by a border which resembles that between South Korea and North Korea. Following the fall of the Berlin Wall, the only city in the world divided by a wall is Nicosia. The Copacabana of the Mediterranean now looks like a ghost town. And the citizens of that beautiful town, expelled 46 years ago, should be granted the right to own their property again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll give the floor now to our colleague Ioannis Lagos for 1 minute.
Σας ευχαριστώ. Η Τουρκία έχει πάρει θάρρος και συμπεριφέρεται κατά αυτόν τον...
Thank you. Turkey is exploiting the pacifism of the European Union, which doesn't even dare respond. Over the past few years, Turkey has been implementing exactly the same foreign policy. It's not Erdogan's policy, it's just Turkey's foreign policy. As long as the EU submits to this, we can't expect a change to that. Without sanctions, we won't be able to put a stop to Turkey or Erdogan. Perhaps we'll be able to gather enough signatures for this. We need to cut off all funding to Turkey to get it to stop. We need to stop all pre-accession funds. And we need to remove Turkey's occupation armies. That's the only way we'll get Turkey to understand. Nor can I understand that a country like Turkey, facing economic troubles close to the EU and close to Germany over the past few years, the money that's been pumped into Turkey is unbelievable, huge sums. I can't understand that. And you're supporting this state for it to stay whole. And can I just show you this photograph? Here's Erdogan in Varosha. Next to him is Kenan Akin, the murderer of Solomou in 1996. There have been charges against this murder, but nothing's ever come about. Unfortunately, the speaker's microphone has been cut off. This is unacceptable, and it's proof of the hypocrisy. The speaker's microphone is cut off once again.
I now give the floor to Vangelis Mermakis.
Οι πρόσφατες και άκρως πολιτικές ενέργειες του Τούρκου Προέδρου με την
President Erdogan's
τελούν τελικά τη σταγόνα που ξεκύλισε το ποτήρι. Αυτή η νέα και ευθεία...
Thank you very much. Now, this is a genuine challenge that we are facing. It's not just a provocation, it's a genuine violation of international law and a violation of the territory of the Republic of Cyprus. It is contrary to the UN resolutions, and it's an action against the EU. Over the last few days, Erdogan, after having well, we've announced that we will discuss all of this at the European Council in December. So, will the Council be reviewing its decisions? We have had the transformation of Hagia Sophia into a mosque. Have we had any kind of apology from Erdogan to his aggressive actions? And certainly Erdogan should never have talked about reopening Varosha or having two states in Cyprus. So this is an attack on European territory. The whole of Cyprus is part of the European Union. But Erdogan has done nothing of what he should have done. In December, the European Council should be adopting severe sanctions against Turkey, an arms embargo, and calling for a freezing or suspension of the customs union. Anything else on our part would be further encouragement of Turkey.
Grazie. Thank you very much. I'll now give the floor to Kostas Mavridis for 1 minute.
Το μέγιστο ζήτημα ενώπιον μας είναι ότι αυτό το
The main question we face is to know whether this resolution should send a clear message to Turkey. Yes, it should. Varosha should be returned to its rightful inhabitants under the aegis of the United Nations, and Turkey should withdraw from the occupied areas. This is something the United Nations has been calling for decades. Withdrawing the occupying troops would allow EU law to be extended to the whole of the island of Cyprus, and that would bring a global solution, peace and security and prosperity to all people, Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots on the island. Mr. Borrell, I turn to you. We've had enough resolutions and agendas. There is no point continuing with failed policies. Words are all well and good, but there comes a time when you fail the citizens of the European Union.
Thank you very much. Philip de Man, for 1 minute. You have the floor.
Thank you, President. The European Union says that it defends human rights. But when Turkey acts like this, the EU leaves its member states in the lurch. The Muslim brother, Erdogan, can do whatever he likes. Occupy half an EU member state, violate the Greek territorial limits, stealing gas and oil, doing whatever he likes with refugee flows, and on top of that he gets 5 billion for the privilege. He can interfere with electoral campaigns, implant mosques, and with full impunity threaten the French and the Germans while taking action in Libya. We need to put a stop to all of this. We need to stop with this naivety. We need to stop negotiating. We've already lost billions. In fact, if Turkey wants to get rid of us, that's no problem. We don't depend on Turkey. It's got an irrelevant GDP, and faced with the power of the EU, Turkey is nothing. But the EU is still being too lax with Turkey. Turkey's always presented a threat. Just think back to the Ottoman Empire. For very long, Europeans were enslaved under the Ottoman Empire, and they're still holding some of Eastern Europe hostage. But don't forget that Constantinople was us.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Arnaud Danjean for 1.5 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, et bonjour à...
Thank you very much, President. Greetings from Strasbourg, the seat of the European Parliament, where I am sitting today. Well, Mr. Erdogan is provoking the EU and its member states. He's intensifying all of the conflicts in our neighborhood, from Libya to the Armenia, and he's acting across the Eastern Mediterranean, particularly here now in Famagusta. When a member state sees its sovereignty attacked, they deserve our full solidarity and not mediation. There can be no neutral mediation. There can be dialogue, but there's no such thing as neutral mediation when somebody is provoking the European Union in this manner. Yes, of course, Turkey is a great nation, a great neighbour with its own interests, which don't always coincide with our own. And we have other problematic neighbours in the European neighbourhood that are also countries that have a relationship with Turkey. But we need a reasonable approach from Ankara. All we see is a repetition of aggressive acts. We need to be lucid today and see that Erdogan's demands go beyond the accustomed nationalist provocations. This is a much wider issue. It is an Islamist threat that is completely incompatible with our values and our view of the world. We are called upon to adopt targeted sanctions and put a full end to the EU accession negotiations with Turkey, which are...
Thank you very much.
Στο Ευρωπαϊκό Συμβούλιο του Οκτωβρίου υποστηρίξατε την υιοθέτηση μιας σε εισαγωγικά...
The October Council decided to adopt a new agenda on Turkey. Notwithstanding, Turkey has pursued continuing provocations in the Caucasus, in Nagorno-Karabakh, in Libya, and elsewhere. Varosha has been abandoned for 46 years, and the town is waiting for the people who were expelled from it. There was a resolution in 1984 calling for the citizens of Varosha to be allowed to return under a UN administration. Unfortunately, people are losing hope with events like the picnic and the contempt it shows for international law. Mr. Borrell, you say you deplore what's going on, but you should take action. There should be sanctions, unilateral sanctions, and specifically no more arms sales to Turkey. And one more thing, Madam President, this is a day of shame to the European Parliament because you've given the floor to somebody sentenced by a Greek court.
Thank you. I do remind the colleagues that we must stick to our time schedule. Mr. Bardella for 1.5 minutes now.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, President. On the 15th of November, the Turkish president, on his visit to Cyprus, clearly carried out hostile action. And the EU is making a mistake in not turning to history to understand what's going on with the Islamist leader Erdogan. Firstly, there's a matter of demographics, something the Ottoman Empire had understood. The Turkish people enabled the invasion of Cyprus in 1974, and those people are still justifying it. Cyprus has become a landing strip for Turkey's ambitions in the Eastern Mediterranean. It's a way for him to contest international maritime law and the sovereignty of the EU. And what's more, EU member states are paying for Turkey to redesign the European seascape to his advantage. We need to turn to history once again, but once again the EU is being as lax as ever, refusing to impose the sanctions that we need. In the south of Armenia, people are also facing the wrath of Erdogan. And the EU stands silent as all of this is happening. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Ms. Zovko for 1.5 minutes.
President, Honourable High Representative, imagine a beautiful town deserted by its inhabitants who were violently forced to leave their homes and their little paradise. This town can be anywhere, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Syria, in Nagorno-Karabakh. This time we talk about the case of Varosha. Many times we have heard from refugees who escaped the war zones that they will only find the peace when they return to their homes in order to reconcile their memories between the two lives they live. A normal life before and a life as a refugee, as a displaced person. According to United Nations conventions that we support in this Parliament, every refugee has the right to return, and no one has a right to take somebody else's property. On a few occasions in the recent months, we had to deal with a candidate country that claims to aspire membership of the EU, while it upholds an irresponsible and aggressive behaviour, causing clashes in the Eastern Mediterranean, making inflammatory speeches and helping the violent conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh. Now the country continues to divide European country and breaks with United Nations Security Council resolutions by digging deeper wounds in the already traumatized memories of the Cypriot citizens. It is a high time to redefine our strategy towards Turkey and to set our borders for defense for our partners. We are here united around values that respect dialogue and tolerance and despise bullying and aggression. It is a time to show exit strategy for the historic mistakes and to stop bullying in and around the European Union. Thank you.
Grazie Hafna.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Antonio Lopez Istúriz-White for 1 minute. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you, Madam President, and I'm very pleased to take the floor under your Vice Presidency. Mr. Borrell, you've had a chance to listen to the members of this Parliament here today. It would appear that we all agree and we're speaking out strongly. But the loudest voice clamouring for sanctions is, in fact, Turkey. They're asking for it, and we're not listening. What's happened in Varosha, the arrests of hundreds of political protesters, entering into conflicts with every state around it, Israel, Armenia, Egypt. When? How long are we going to put up with this? And the open attacks on 2 European member states, Greece and Cyprus. We can't keep putting up with this. We need sanctions now. The Parliament wants to work with the Commission, and we would like to see the European Council follow in our footsteps very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Peter van Dalen for 1 minute.
Ja, goedemiddag voorzitter. Voorzitter, de Turkse agressie groeit. We zien...
Turkey is acting in this way against Greece, Cyprus, Libya.
Gaan met Turkije met diplomatie.
And here we see calls for dialogue and cooperation with Turkey. How can you cooperate, though? If there's something that Turkey doesn't want, it's to talk. Turkey has been putting pressure on the European Union for years. We have big Turkish communities in many member states, and we should not yield to this kind of blackmail. Mr. Borrell, we have to stop showing weakness.
Grazie.
Thank you very much. Now to close this debate, I would like to give the floor to the High Representative